So all the plans are in place, the family at this stage is happy, the business is starting to really roll. How do we make sure that everything that we set out to achieve, so we've planned it, everybody knows their roles, how do we keep that all-important family business dynamic, that dual dependency, healthy and on track?
One of the key things that really helps is to have a regular look at the business. The disciplines of a monthly meeting are incredibly powerful, because through the requirement of monthly meetings, say financial accounts being the basis of that, is that you're then focused on performance and results, and with all of that you're getting facts. And the difference between a family and a business, as we've talked about before, is the emotion versus the more factual information. So the greater focus you can get on the facts, then the less you get the emotional aspects and the sometimes irrational responses to things as a consequence. That's one of the main ways to keep that correct focus. And as a consequence of that, you actually get the family looked after better, because you're then having less emotional heat going on all the time. Because if you don't have facts, then all you'll get presented in meetings is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different opinions. And that's what then generates the emotional heat and the problems and the conflicts. So that focal point of the discipline of a monthly meeting is just so powerful.
Yeah, and I think there's so many things that can happen to a business at any point in its trading journey that can cause real challenges, full stop. So you do want to keep that heat down, don't you?
Yes.
And so that you can really focus on what the business needs, as opposed to family dynamics that, if you manage them early enough, can actually be managed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you're in a stronger position to react to things.
Yeah.
When curveballs get thrown at you and there's a market shift, or there's even a change in the family dynamic, sometimes that can be a change, and that causes a little ripple effect. So the more you have got your structure right and your roles sorted out between you, the more easily you can react to things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What, in your experience, and I know you've got a lot of experience, both of you, in dealing with the sort of the challenges of running and the sort of the tensions that can come out of the dynamic from time to time, what typically causes that dynamic to come off kilter? Are there any sort of patterns or trends that you see?
Unfairness, lack of equality. And that can come in all sorts of forms.
Right.
It's such an enormous driver in a family. Equality is just one of the most powerful forces in a family. If there's a lack of that, then it's seen as unfair. So, for example, if somebody's working longer hours or achieving more results and not getting rewarded appropriately for that, then there might be an idea that everyone should be treated equally in terms of income.
Yeah.
In those kind of situations, that's not always a good idea. And the equality can also come in other ways. It's not just about a financial or material sense. It can be in the amount of attention that an individual gets in the family. It can be the level of perhaps discipline. So the equality is all sorts of factors, but it's such a driver in things. It really does trigger a lot of the conflict that we see if that's not dealt with appropriately. And it's a real shame when it happens.
I think it must be, I agree with you, I think it must be really challenging as well, that if something's not going quite right, and that often is because the market's changed or the economy has taken a downturn, sales aren't going the way that you expected. Every business suffers from this, right? But it must be quite difficult not to take that home and more than that, not to point fingers, because sometimes you do just want to go home and rant. And it's not personal even when you go home and rant. But if you're carrying your work home with you and work is also surrounding you because all your colleagues at work are effectively sitting around the kitchen table with you, it must be really difficult not to do that sort of petty, if you had just done this differently, and then for that to kind of blow out of proportion.
Well, that's certainly a factor that you would be reluctant to bring those up, because It's not like coming home from a normal job
No.
and having a moan about your manager or your colleague.
I mean, let's face it, we all do it, right?
Yeah, because they'd be all around you at the table
Exactly
or whatever. But then the other side of that coin is true also, that what if they are to blame, right? So what if it's not just a moan? What if it's not just you who's moaning? What about if they actually are to blame for something that's not getting done properly,
Yeah.
or not getting done to its fullest extent? Then you still don't want to bring that up, even if you think your cause is just, because it's family. So where you might have felt free to bring that up in a corporate setting, you certainly won't feel free to bring that up in
Well,
a
it could
family
have
setting.
far long-lasting
Yeah,
effects that,
yeah.
that you probably haven't anticipated.
Yeah.
I mean, that is we're going to come and talk about
It
family
is.
conflict in a moment, but that's definitely an area where you probably want some help.
You would want some help in that, and you would want to be able to refer to what you decided your goals were as a family, so that you could gently bring that in as a business issue rather than a personal accusation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it comes back to the point that you were making really well earlier, Mark, about
Yeah.
being about the facts, not the emotion.
Yes, and that's where sometimes having an outsider in the management of the business is quite useful,
Yeah.
because it brings just a different balance to the conversations and the right tone to the conversations, and keeps them more factual based. So that can be, for example, a non-exec director on the board, that kind of thing.
It's good, isn't it, to, I think, have that external influence as well, or that grounding from time to time. But I think the reality is things do go wrong in business. People do make mistakes. It's hard sometimes not to allow that to blow out of proportion in any setting. You know, there is anger, there is frustration, there is disappointment often, and we carry those with us as individuals. I think carrying it home and then letting it sort of continue to live and possibly even be fanned a bit and the flames get higher really isn't very healthy, is it?
There needs to be some guidance as to the way that the communications are going to be allowed. When you're having board meetings, for example, there need to be a certain set of guidelines, we'll call them, rather than rules, about the way people should conduct themselves in meetings, and getting them to stop and think about the way they're putting things across, and just take a deep breath before you say something, because otherwise something that's said in the heat of a moment could be pulled back up as a problem for quite a long time, and that really is not helpful for the family or the business.
We always used to say if you wouldn't want it written in the press or you wouldn't want it posted on Twitter, then don't say it now, because that is the kind of impact that it can often have, that sort of inflammatory moment.
Yes, and families tend to say things to each other that normal people communicate.
Exactly.
So they need to behave.
Yes, because the disciplinary process is slightly different.
Yes.
So I think unfairness and inequality, definitely really big things. Not finger pointing, allowing people to make mistakes, dealing with really serious issues when more than a mistake might perhaps have been made is really important. But these are the areas that do really cause that dynamic to suddenly grate, don't they?